So when I think about this whole theology of work, this is for you. You say it, I'm going to repeat it. We won't do the microphones just yet. But what is some phrases that describe the American attitude toward work? And one of them I hear pretty regularly is TGIF, which is what? Thank God it's Friday, which means what? I hate my job. Yeah, weekends are made for fun. Work is made to, So work is what? And if you can't see this, you're too far away. There's lots of chairs up here in front. Pardon? Hustle. To do what? Oh, yeah, there you go. And for some, it's to form an identity. So what's the first question? Michael came up and introduced himself and pretty quickly asked an identity question. What did I ask him? What do you do? See, our work is a point of identity. I'm a seminary professor, and I'm glad for that. That's not my primary identity, but it is an identity. What else? American attitude toward work. There's some other not kind of fun, sarcastic phrases. Resentful? Why? Why? Yeah. This I'm going to email to Brad. If you don't get it, it's his fault, not mine.
Mm-hmm. You can take notes, but you don't have to.
Right.
Send you all this.
Yeah.
My fault.
Yeah. You've seen the Walt Disney movie? You know, the little dwarves doing their thing. What are they singing? Hi-ho. It's, yeah, you know it. To work I go. Yeah. And if you change it just slightly, instead of hi-ho, it's I-O. I-O. Because the dwarves are, you know, they're singing and cheery kind of stuff, but for many, it's I-O. I've got to support my lifestyle. Mm-hmm. What are a couple other things? I mean, there's a lot of them.
Working 9 to 5.
Which carries the idea of working 9 to 5.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's usually with a sad face emoji. Because it ain't 5 o'clock here. Yeah. You guys get it. What are a couple others?
Coffees for closers.
Coffees.
For closers.
Coffee. I haven't heard this one. Coffees for closers?
Yeah, it's a line from a play about salesmen.
Oh. Oh, for closers. Oh, I thought you meant closing the restaurant.
No.
You mean closing the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, coffees for when you, yeah. And if you don't close, then, you know, you don't have a job.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, man, there you go. Sleep is for the weak. Yeah. And pain is the lazy going out. Yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's kind of TGIF. Is it Friday yet? And yeah. Working hard, hardly working. Mm-hmm. Work hard, play hard. Yeah. 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 I mean, you can add a lot of things like that. And what's happening here is, I mean, this is something that particularly here, well, until fairly recently, I heard a lot. Thank God I have what? A job that pays enough to whatever. And that's still true. There are a lot of people, of course, that have a job, but it doesn't even come close. I talked to a fair number of people who are lower class people, and one woman I talked to at some length, she says, my biggest dream is getting to be middle class, and I don't know how to get there from here. She had a job, single mom with kids, which is like walking with a ball and chain. And she came to our church and discovered Christian community that would help her with childcare and such. I don't think she ever made middle class. She ended up leaving, moving to a different place because Portland's too expensive to live. And I think she moved over to Eastern Oregon where things are cheaper, but jobs are fewer. Yeah, a lot of things. What do we call Wednesday? What does that mean? Yeah, see, y'all know. Y'all know. Yeah, hump day. Yeah, or maybe hump day. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. See, and when I think about this, what I think here is there's a ministry called Halftime. It's an organization. Have you ever run across Halftime? This is a group of people who look at their lives, and the first half of their life is to get involved in business, make a good bit of money, and then halftime is when they retire and then do ministry the rest of their time. So they work half their life and then retire from the job and do ministry after the rest of your life. What's the retirement age? Well, not 75 because I'm not there yet. I'm a long ways from retired. But in American, what is if you're well-to-do? I mean, I'm not talking about the people who retire at 32 because they, got a startup and sold it for $17.3 billion or something. But kind of normal, upper middle class. What's the expected retirement date? 65 to 70 in that area. So halftime would be around 40. So in the first 20 years of your life, you get a good job, make a lot of money, save it, be frugal, and then halftime, and it may be 50, is you quit your job, you quit working, and do ministry. Good idea or bad idea? Why is that a bad idea? You're anti-ministry?
Not anti-ministry, but if you use the first 20 years of your life, what if you got cancer at 40? You don't have time for ministry.
Good point. If you're assuming that I will live to 50 and then have good health after 50, you're betting on odds against, in many cases, an odds against bet. That's a piece of it. I think there's a worse idea than that. I think this is, I really, really, really don't like the idea of halftime ministries. Seriously, and you wonder, okay, Gary, like what's the problem? Are you anti-ministry? No, what I am, I'm pro-work. And see, the American definition of work, when I think about it, the American definition of work is to make money so I can do what I want to do. That's, when you come right down to it, that's the American definition of work. And work is a job, and its purpose is to make money, and I'm, whatever it is, I'm closing insurance deals or maybe selling businesses or whatever you're doing, putting part A and part B or, doing work in the entertainment industry. There's all kinds of different work. But my purpose of working is to make money, and I make money so I can fund my weekends, and weekends may be fun or weekends may be ministry or something like that, I think it's a horrible idea. Horrible idea. And you say, okay, Gary, to explain. I will. A distinction that came up is, it's been around a long time, sacred versus secular. Sacred means what? Yeah, holy, dedicated to God. So sacred is stuff that you do that's dedicated to God. Secular is what? Work. It's the stuff that's not church related. It's when you're down at Intel or working at a Porter Ranch or whatever it is. And that distinction, to me, again, I think this is a bad distinction. A similar kind of thing is the Catholic priesthood. Okay. Now, Catholic priesthood, in a Catholic world, Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox, Catholic priesthood, what is a priest? What is a priest? But how do you get to be a priest? What do you have to do to become a priest in Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? Yep. You prepare for a dedicated life, and then this ordained person can do spiritual work. If you want to be married and you're Catholic, who can do the wedding? Only an ordained priest. Now, a lot of people here in the United States just blow it off, but their marriages are actually defiled marriages because they've not gone through the sacrament of marriage. So if the Catholic prayer came to me, and I'm an ordained minister as a Baptist, I'm licensed by the state of Oregon to do weddings, well, Multnomah County actually. From the Roman Catholic perspective, if I say I pronounce you husband and wife, they're not married because I'm not a priest. I cannot do the sacrament of marriage. So the idea was, if you want to be blessed by God, you must become a sacred person. You must become a priest, a monk, a nun, something like that. If you're not that, you're second class at best and you can't really do spiritual work. And that has come across into Protestantism, even though many things have changed. And the idea is, in this particular view, in sacred versus secular, this is ministry versus work. And I deeply, deeply, deeply disagree with that. So I'm guessing around here that you have some kind of phrase, every member a minister. Do you?
I don't shout it or no.
If you were to shout it, Brad, what would you say? Every member a minister, you would say, get a microphone because you're going to talk just a little bit. If you're going to say more, I'll repeat questions, but I can't repeat statements. So.
I would say more the priesthood of all believers.
Well, we're going there.
Okay.
Every member a minister is a very common phrase in many Protestant churches, which means what?
That all Christians are doing the sacred work of ministry.
Let me be a little more crass, a little more realistic. All Christians help with the work of the church. So in this case, ministry is what? No.
You're saying this is not a good view.
I'm giving you what this phrase actually means when I talk to people in churches.
Ministry is building up the church.
Ministry is teaching Sunday school, in the worship team, cleaning bathrooms. Where? Now, that we help out with the work of church, good idea or bad idea? Great idea. But see, this is still sacred versus secular. Because ministry is stuff that's in the building or serving the building or directly serving spiritual stuff. Now, I think this is a great idea. I'm way on this side of thing versus ministry as a professional thing. We hire people to do it so we can go to a nice clean building and have a really good meeting and go home and, watch the football game. Did the Chiefs win today? Yes. My son is a huge Chiefs fan. He lives in Kansas City. He's got 2 seasons tickets, and I'll be at the Chiefs game on Christmas Eve day. And I look at the number of people. Derek Carr, one of my cohorters, he's in a church in Oakland area, and Derek Carr was when he was with the Oakland Raiders instead of whatever they are Raiders now. What are they now? The Desert Raiders or something like that. Yeah. But Derek Carr is a phenomenal Christian man. Travis Kelce, phenomenal Christian man. There are a lot of them like that, and I'm glad for him. But priesthood of the believer is a different kind of thing. Priesthood of the believer is what? Go on. If you're here, I'm going to put you to work.
This gives you a glimpse of seminary class.
Yeah.
He grills me all the time. Priesthood of the believers. I would say that's what I was trying to say, the first one. It's that every Christian is a minister.
But you got to define ministry.
In the world. Is a servant of Jesus. Gifted. I'm just going to throw words out there if they stick. Lovely. To bless the world. To be a blessable image bearer.
Hang on to that. We're going to do that phrase in just a minute. Yeah. To bring God's blessing.
Jonathan should have answers too, so.
That's right. Jonathan's here. Yeah. And he's got a great helper with him sitting beside him to whisper right answers in his ear. Way to go, Kaylee. Yeah. To bring God's blessing to all peoples. Like the Abrahamic blessing we talked about this morning. So now a key thing here is this goes past the differentiation of work and ministry. And Luther, the great reformer, very prominently said, the carpenter's hammer is a tool of God. The cobbler's hammer, or tool, whatever, leather tool. What do you call a leather tool? Awl? Is that the way you spell it? It must be. If Microsoft likes it, it must be okay. Is God's work. And he famously made the statement that a priest who does the sacrament of communion, Eucharist, and the cobbler who makes shoes for the people in the community are both ministers of the Lord Most High. And I absolutely believe that. So let me do a little quiz here. Who is the guy I talked about this morning, as I said, was kind of the father of our faith? What was his name? Abraham. What was his job? What was Abraham's job? He was not a shoemaker. Yeah. He wasn't a shepherd. That was Moses later on. What? The word we'd use today, he was an agribusiness. He was an agribusiness. He had a pretty good group of people, and he had an area there at down South Israel and he was in doing agribusiness. Was he a priest? Was he a priest? No. Did he serve in the temple? Why not? There wasn't a temple, yeah. Did he do sacrifices? Yes, we saw it this morning. Yeah, so that's Abraham. Moses, for the second third of his life, what was his business? Shepherd, running sheep around the desert. Was he good at it? Probably. Probably. Well, the bush was a bit distracting, to be sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then the third half of his life, what was he in the third half of his life? He was what? Yeah, he did the Exodus, and then they got to Mount Sinai, and he worked with some people there. They took the 2-week trip up to Kadesh Barnea and had a little rebellion, and then wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years. God did not destroy the people in the wilderness. He waited for them to die because they forfeited the blessing going to the land by not believing God, insulting him for the 10th time. And God said, okay, that's it. You don't go in the land. But he didn't destroy them. He provides manna and quail for them, provides water, protects them from enemies, and even their shoes don't wear out for 40 years until they die. People hear all the time, oh, God destroyed them in the wilderness. They got lost. They needed GPS. No, they know exactly where they're going. God said, you can't go in because you insulted me and you don't get to go in. What was Moses' role? He was he wasn't doing a lot of meat eating once they did the wilderness thing. He's trying to herd cats in the desert. What do you call that? Hopeless. He's kind of a military leader. He's kind of a mayor of and we don't have exactly a thing like that these days. He'd be in contemporary terms, he would be a Bedouin sheikh with people in tents in the desert. There are still Bedouins running on the desert in the Middle East, and he's leading a group of Bedouins, except it's a fairly large group. David, man after God's own heart. What's his job? No. When he went to after he got into his job, his initially was a shepherd, but that was boy taking care of the sheep, daddy's sheep. Daddy was in agribusiness. What would we call him? He's a king. What would we call him? Politician. Good thing or bad thing? See, and I think a godly politician is a phenomenal gift to us. And I won't use contemporary names because I'm going to tick people off if I do, no matter what I say. And I have opinions, don't kid yourself. But one of my heroes is George C. Marshall. What did George Marshall do in World War II? He was the general of the armies. He was the top dog general of the army. What did he do after World War II? Became Secretary of State. And he did the Marshall Plan, which was what? Let's go back to Europe, let's go back to Japan and rebuild the places we bombed into. The Dresden bombing and burning the entire city of Dresden was one of the most horrible things of the entire World War. It's worse than Nagasaki and Hiroshima by a lot. And he went back and rebuilt the enemy. Where in the world did the idea that we should rebuild enemies instead of sacking everything to do reparations for us? Where do you get that idea? Right out of the Bible. Profoundly Christian man. And changed the world. Changed the world. Because he was a wise politician who took Christian principles into the world scene and was able to develop consensus around that. Amazing man of God. Amazing man of God. We need more George C. Marshalls, who was a peacemaker, consensus builder, who could unify people to do good work. So that's what I'm thinking of. So, Gerry has a definition of work. Where did I get it? No. Where did I get it? Dorothy Sayers, a wonderful, brilliant author and a really good theologian, though she did most of her work in novels and essays, via Tim Keller. His work, Every Good Endeavor, is an outstanding book on theology work. I've got sermons and such. He's just a profound man via me, because I got to play with everything. Yeah. So in my understanding, let me get the thing down here. Work is the gracious. What's a one-word definition of grace? Help. The one-word definition of grace is not what it means in English. In English, grace means, hey, come on, give me a little grace. What does grace mean in that sentence? Give me a pass, not even forgiveness. Give me a pass on sin. Don't hold me accountable. See, that's not grace, although that's what a lot of Christians think it means. Grace means God's undeserved help, and other times his deserved help. God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's deserved help. But grace is just God's help. So this is God's gracious, God's helpful expression. You'll all memorize this, you won't be allowed to leave tonight. Yeah, just to be sure. Of Yahweh's creative energy in service of others to create shalom. And what is shalom? It means, well, shalom, we did it this morning. Shalom means is a community with all relationships, God, others, self, rest of creation, well-ordered, full of flourishing as God designed it to be, where even the worthless to me person is of value and that kind of thing. That's what shalom is. We use peace, but it's way too weak a concept. So tzedakah, mishpat, shalom are synonyms in Hebrew, pretty much. I think that's what it is. Work is the gracious expression of Yahweh's creative energy in service of others to create shalom. Does God do work? Where would we find that? Okay, well, let's take a look. Yep, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And what starts up here? The land is uncultivated and uninhabited. That's what those words mean. Darkness, spirit of God is hovering. And God said, day, night, and that's one day. A lot of things I could say here I'm not going to do. And he makes an expanse, separates, you get evening and morning the second day. This is God working. Third day, let dry land appear. The dry land he calls land, seas. And what does God say? Work. Good thing, bad thing? How do we know that? It says so right here. God is doing it. And then what does he do? He produces some barley, wheat, fig trees, and olive trees, and puts it in the land. And God said, that's good. Third day. Fourth day, some lights that tell us when to worship. How do you tell when to do Sabbath in a Jewish context? How do you know when it's Sabbath time? When the sun hits a certain spot, as viewed from a certain spot in Jerusalem, when the sun hits a certain spot, you toot the shofar, and that means Sabbath begins. How do you know when Passover is? It's the first full moon after the spring solstice. Spring equinox. The sun, moon, stars have their purpose, but their biggest purpose until we know when to do the festivals. And God said, what? What is God doing here? He is doing good. Fifth day, we need some cattle, we need some birds, so we need some whales, good things. We need some big cattle, we need some swarmy stuff in the water, He does all those kinds of things, and what does God say? He's continued to do good. And he tells them, be fruitful, multiply, fill that, let them done, evening, morning, fifth day. Now let's make some more living creatures. So what are these? Bugs and spiders. Good thing or bad thing? No, spiders are good. I'm told that some of you murder spiders. God said, have dominion over spiders, don't murder them. None of you murder spiders, do you? Because that would be evil. No. What do you do with spiders who are in the wrong domain? No, you don't bring judgment. Good night. That's called murder, brother. Intentional killing of a living being is called murder. They put you in prison for that sometimes. What should you do with a spider?
Bring it to your house.
You move it to its proper domain. I've been trying for 54 plus years to teach my pretty wife that murdering a spider is sin. She's not yet convinced, I have to say. No, exercise domain means if the spider is a spot you don't like it, you get a little cup and piece of paper and relocate it. Why do you have such a thing? Good night. I think you should quit this church. And what does God say? It's good. Then he said, let us make man in our image, likeness. And here's what it says, have dominion over the creepy stuff. So what does it say about man? This is male and female, not just one man. So when you think of humanity here, humans are image bearers. Okay. So image bearers, we're talking about Genesis 1. Men and women, individually and together. And what does God do to them? God blesses them, so let's say they're blessable, image-bearing. Too many letters in there. Okay. And God said to them, do what? It doesn't mean have babies, at least not only. What does it mean? See, what he's doing here, let me come back just a second. Work with me to rule the rest of creation. Image bearing. So I'm going to say covenant partners. So blessable, image bearing, covenant partners. So blessable means you can respond, be blessed and respond to that. Image bearing means that we have the ability and responsibility to make visible the invisible characteristics of our Creator and Redeemer. Covenant partners means we're working with Him side by side. And who will, no, what is this? It's not just make babies. What is it, Jonathan? Well, you're going one step beyond, but we're getting there. Who will, come on, do it my way. See, we all say, that makes have babies. No, you got to raise that little tyke. In a sinful world, that can be challenging. So we're making more blessable, enjoying covenant partners who will fill the uninhabited land and rule over who, in this, now Jonathan, who will do what? Create, let's use communities, but same idea. Communities of So if I put words on Tzedakah Mishpat instead of Hebrew, what are these? Justice, faithfulness, beauty, joy, love, etc. That's work. And the way we do this, this work is doing good. God's primary weapon in crushing the serpent. So when I look over here, and I go to Romans chapter 12, this is a community that we're talking about. Rejoice, rejoice, weep those who weep, live in harmony with another, don't associate with the lowly, don't be wise in your own sight, repay no one evil for evil. Boy, is that not a cultural thing in our world today. But give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. I mean, the way to make it, I'm in Oregon right now. We've got 3 women running for governor. One of them is a Christian woman. She's in a church I know well. I don't know her at all. But the pastor of the church, who's a buddy, says, yeah, she's a strong Christian woman. And she's doing the same attack ads as the other 2 women. They're vicious to each other. I really wish that she were showing Christian attitude toward her opponents. But you can't get elected. I mean, so never avenge yourselves, leave vengeance to God. What do you do with enemies? And when you give your enemy something to eat, what are you doing? Driving him crazy. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. See, that's work. So when I look at this, and we're going to take a little bit and talk about what this means practically in just a minute. When I look at if our work is doing what God did, taking the uninhabited, uncultivated land and bring beauty and food and people and justice and beauty and all those kind of things into that land, and that is doing good, he calls us to do the same thing in partnership with him. So, who is more important? Brad is lead pastor of Restored LA, or somebody here who's a lawyer? Who is more important in the kingdom of God? Well, let's say somebody's a politician. Lawyers, I mean, some people actually like lawyers. Nobody likes a politician these days, right? I'm a little facetious. Who's more important? See, and they're both important. And they both need to do it for the Lord. Can you be a pastor and be an evil person? Oh yeah, I can name them. I've blown some out of ministry. I'm really glad about that. Can you be a politician, be a crooked so-and-so? Yeah. Can you do it and pretend to be Christian? Yeah, we could name some. Can you be a politician and bring good in the world? Be a George C. Marshall. And what I'd like to suggest to you is that anybody, anywhere, can do worshipful work. Let me do one more thing here, biblically. So God does the Adam and Eve thing, forms out of breath and becomes a living creature. He plants a garden, puts the man there, and again we get the food trees, all that sort of stuff. River flows out, a lot of stuff we could say. So why is all this stuff here? Why do you have this gold and onyx and bdellium and all those kind of things? That's the raw materials of beauty. That's the raw materials of beauty. And you get these rivers. He took the man, put him in the garden to do what? Work and keep it. Now, when you see those 2 words together, Work is abad in Hebrew. Keep is shamar. I mentioned that one this morning. Work and keep together is always temple language. Everywhere else in the Bible where those two verbs appear together, it's temple service. What does it say about the garden? Garden is a temple. It's a place for worshipful work. And they do together these things, and they name the animals. That's God working with. That's a blessed image-bearing covenant partner. And you get a woman coming along. He sings his song of delight. And I sing a song of delight for several women, but one in particular, my pretty wife, Gerry. She did not come out of me, but we have done the naked and not ashamed and love doing it. Yeah, we really do. God has absolutely blessed sexuality, and we have so defiled it that I can't say something like that. You think I'm telling a dirty joke. What a shame. I tell you, with 54 years experience with one woman, sex is blessed of God in an incredible way to enhance, deepen, and confirm our marriage union. When you do it outside of marriage, then you're defiling it and taking somebody's beauty and misusing it. That's where it is. That's a work. That's work. Make more blessable Indian covenant partners as family. And we have two bio sons, but we've got a lot more kids than that. We've got an adopted daughter. I've got a sort of son. I've got a half a dozen non-legal, not illegal, non-legal kids and grandkids, and 30 or so bonus kids. Sherry and I collect kids. None of them out of the foster care system. When Sherry married, she said, okay, I'm middle of three. I hate being the middle of three. We will not have 3 children. You can have 2, we can have 4. I thought about it. 2 hands, 2 parents, 2 kids, makes more sense. So we stopped at 2 bio kids, and I said, if we need any more, we'll go to the store and buy them. You don't have to. They're wandering the street like kittens. You just bring them home. Now, be careful how you do that, to be sure, but we have brought a lot of kids home. Not illegally, but other than Cindy, there's no legal connection between me and Christopher, our sort of son, but when I see him next week in Tulsa, where he and Johnette have just moved, we will celebrate together. He's our sort of son. He was a throwaway kid that we brought home, and he ended up living with us for 2 years, came to Christ. Johnette came to Christ. I did their wedding. So I've got 2 sort of grandkids. It's what you do it. See, that's work. It's the gracious expression of Yahweh's creative energy in service of others to create shalom, taking disorder. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the practicalities of this. One of the practicalities is, it's easy to do that if you're George C. Marshall. It's easy to do that at this, but what if we've got a thing we do in Oregon. It's called the Hood to Coast Relay. Any heard of that? No, kind of, sort of, maybe. We start up on the side of Mount Hood, and teams of 12 get in 2 vans, and they run a relay race, 6 miles per leg on the average, starting up at the foot of Mount Hood, at the lodge up there, and you run in relays to Seaside, Oregon. It's 196 miles, and you do 3 shifts. So I do van 1. I've never run the thing. I would never do anything so stupid, ever. But I love driving the van and being part of the team and taking load off them. I've done that a number of times. And I watch these guys, the first leg, it's great. They get back in, way to go, great, and you get a couple hours of rest, usually not sleep, and then you pick up again in downtown Portland, and you do legs out to the Columbia River, Scappoose area, and then you try to get a little bit of sleep. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. You've done 2 of these 6-mile legs, and in between you get in the van and cramp up like crazy, and you've done 2 of them. Your body is now rebelling. You sleep for a couple hours, and I'm the van driver that comes into the bed and says, we got to go. It's time to go to the exchange because leg 3 is coming. What is the response from these people when I wake them up and say it's time for leg 3? Oh man, I put on my armor before I go in because I am not the most popular guy in the world by a lot. I mean, they know they're going to do it, but oh, the groans. Oh. Get them out of bed, get them in the van, get them good and cramped, drive over to the third exchange point at Mist. And they're on a third leg. And by now, the body is rebelling seriously. What is the most popular spot on those leg 3 exchanges? Porta potties. Porta potties. Because your body has rebelled and it's ejecting excess material catastrophically. And the lines are long. I could tell you stories. And the worst thing in the world is when you get to the exchange finally, and the lines at all the porta potties are long, and you got to stand in line, and your body is saying, I'm not going to wait that long. You could fill in the gap with your imagination. And we were at one of these things. Now, I'm doing fine because I'm not running. I mean, I do porta potty like anybody else, but, I'm not desperate, and my body's not rebelling. And I got there this one time, and the porta potty has an essential support detail. It's a truck with a hose. It's the porta potty sucker outer. And then to get some nice new clean stuff in that porta potty, which has become defiled, shall we say. You get the point. So I come up to this thing, and I'm kind of wandering around waiting for our runner to arrive so he can hand the baton off to our guy and to get him back in the van and cramp up even worse. And here comes a porta potty sucker outer truck. And he now locks up a porta potty. And the people in line are told, go away. Who is the most unpopular in the world? I mean, fortunately, you can't run the hood to coast and have a, concealed carry. It doesn't fit under your shorts. And he goes in and starts sucking the thing out. And I thought, So I walked over to him and I said, thank you for your work because you are creating shalom. I didn't say that phrase, but that was my own thing. You're creating order in a very needy environment. And sure, you're short-term unpopular, but what you're doing is essential to the really good time that these runners are having doing the Hood to Coast relay, because Seaside is coming and there's food there. And I just said that to him, and I probably used a Christian word. I probably said, bless you or something, God bless you or something like that, because I just do that so naturally. And this porta potty sucker outer looked at me. I've gone on Western flyers, and I used a Christian code word. And he just looked at me and says, I do it as a service to God. And I said, score. That man is doing high-level ministry using the creative energies, gracious energies of the gracious expression, the creative energies of Yahweh in service of others to create shalom. Now, if you can do the work of God as a porta potty sucker outer, my guess probably nobody at 10 years old, I want to study hard to be a porta potty sucker outer. And that, I don't know anything about the guy in that one thing. He was doing ministry as much as an ordained pastor like me who's doing weddings and marriage counseling and all those things. I firmly believe that. Those are both ministries because he's doing it in the name and power of God to create order and to create beauty. That's my thing. Do you need to take a break before we do some other stuff or motor on to 8:30?
At like 8:15, we'll do a few songs, and we'll do a little prayer ministry. So,
Okay.
if you need to use the restroom, just go. We'll just keep
Yep.
going, I think.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and do it.
We have 35 minutes.
So what I want to do is just talk about how we do this at a practical level One of the passages that for me is just crucial in this whole thing is 1 Thessalonians 4:9. This is Paul talking about, this is the ESV, let's see what CSB says. Yeah, CSB says loving and working as a heading. Now about brotherly love, Philadelphia, you don't need to write to me because yourselves are taught by God to love one another. What does that mean? In fact, you're doing this toward all the brothers and sisters in the entire region of Macedonia. We encourage you, brothers and sisters, do this even more. And what is this brotherly love? What is this worshipful work? Seek to lead a quiet life, mind your own business, work with your hands as we've commanded you, so that you may behave properly in the presence of outsiders and not be dependent on anyone. That is his very quick summary of Christian work. Lead a peaceful life, mind your business. I don't have to horn into your thing and tell you why you're doing it wrong. Work with your hands, which means like God did making humans, get your hands in the mud and do the work, and behave honorably in the presence of outsiders so they see the character and the presence of God in your worshipful work. I think that's a good thing to do. You're going to get some microphones here, right? Tell you a story, my pretty wife. I'm an Enneagram 8, which means what? I'm the challenger. I'm the guy that runs the world. I don't trust anybody. Get out of my way because I'll run right over you. Well, I'm an 8-wing 9, so I'm the kind 8. But anybody that's brown can tell you I'm the challenger. It's true. So what is the perfect mate for an Enneagram 8? What's the perfect mate for an Enneagram 8? An Enneagram 9. What's the Enneagram 9? The peaceful one. I used to say I'm dominant, Sherry's avoidant or accommodating. Now I just say I'm an 8, she's a 9. People, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. My pretty wife is not a challenger of any kind at all. I hack into people's life for fun. And for healing, to be sure. Sherry did much of her life, started as a bank teller, and then got involved and became a network thing. In the early days of wide area networking, as that was being developed, she was working for then Bank of America, developing wide area networking, things like ATMs and those sorts of things as they were developing. There were no manuals for this thing. It was too new. They were talking to representatives and figuring it out as they went, and she was with the team that was doing it. She had some training, but mostly just on the job learning how to do it, and she's good at what she did. I mean, she's really good. She was working in an office full of high-achieving professionals in this network engineering job, and she was doing great work, and she's a believer in Jesus Christ. But she's never one to go in and make a scene of being a believer. She's never one to, walk in and do the thing, start a Bible study, work time Bible study. She just wouldn't do that. And she's not the sort that would come in and put a Bible on her desk, do those kind of signals, I'm a Christian in the workplace. The stuff that would be workplace ministries on the whole, she didn't do any of those things. She was just Sherry. People in the group would get in trouble, something to come up in their marriage or life or with kids or whatever it was, and they'd come to Sherry and say what? And say what? What? Can I talk to you? And they'd say one more thing. Will you pray for me? Now, a lot of these people are not in any significant sense Christian. Why did they come to Sherry and say, will you pray for me? Because everybody everywhere knew this is a Christian woman. She didn't wear signs on her chest. She didn't signal it in the ostentatious kind of way. She was just Sherry. And just the way she lived, and people asked her about things, and she didn't hide that she was a member of a church, and sometimes she'd mention that her husband was a seminary prof and such, pastor. But it wasn't to make waves. It wasn't to do Christian ministry in the workplace. It's just who she was and is. She's been retired now since 2009. But all kinds of people come to her and they just say, can we talk? And they would ask her, will you pray for me? She was never one to say, really, can I pray for you? Unless she had a relationship with somebody. And she's one of the most effective workplace ministers I know in the most unostentatious ways. She is avoidant off the charts, partly her personality and partly because of the abusive home that she grew up in. And here's an incredibly effective workplace minister who didn't do anything. I worked my way through, my first kind of real job, I got hired to be a bookkeeper in a finance company, and I became a full-charge bookkeeper and a math teacher, and went to the Philippines. When I came back from the Philippines and started seminary, I needed a job. And I actually done some training in the Philippines in photography, and an idea I'd get a job doing large photo printing. It was really fun, and I'd learned enough about it. I couldn't get a job doing photo printing. I went to the places, but I never got hired. I didn't have enough training or experience to do it. So I ended up getting a job as a full-charge bookkeeper in a machine shop. And the full-charge bookkeeper, I can do that in my sleep. And I said, well, it's a 20-hour job. I looked at their system and I said, well, it won't take me 20 hours to do this. They thought it would take more than that because the woman they had before that couldn't do it in 40 hours. And they knew that she wasn't real efficient. I said, there's no way this could take me 20 hours. Do you have some stuff in the shop that I can do when I finish the bookkeeping? Oh, there's always stuff to do in a machine shop, for sure. And by the end of my 3 years of seminary, I was a decent general machinist, just because I'd ask them questions, how do you do this kind of stuff? And then when I was in doctoral program, I ended up working in a small machine shop in Pasadena and became a very highly skilled precision machinist, and I did it all during my doctoral program. And when I finished my doctoral program to go to Western and close my box, that was the end of my machining career. But in that time, I'm working in a place where almost everybody in the shop is not in any sense Christian. They know who I am because I'm an aide. I'll always tell people, and I will always make the point I'm a pastor because I want to hack into their lives and see what's behind the curtain. And we'd have coffee breaks, and we had all kinds of conversations, not philosophical, apologetic conversations, but life conversations, because I want to know how they're dealing with the stress of their life. I want to provide them hope and courage and healing in the name of Jesus. Now, I'm doing a different kind of workplace ministry by a bunch than Sherry, but I'm doing it in a hard place to work. It was a machine shop, and machinists on the whole are pretty cynical and mad at the boss because he's not doing this or that. You know how it is. Different kinds of workplace ministry. And I'm a pastor. I've never been on staff of a church. Well, I was for 3 months, so I got back from the Philippines, but so there's different kinds of things. What I want to know is just some practical kinds of things. What would work look like in your environment if you're doing it for the Lord? If you're doing work is the gracious, can you say it with me? Where is that? There it is. Work is what? Gracious expression of Yahweh's creative energy in service of others to create shalom. What would that look like in your environment? Yep. Have courage. Is there an 8 in the crowd?
This guy,
Okay.
he does it really well, so tell us.
Well, this is in response to your earlier question, if the lawyer or the Brad is more important. It's definitely the lawyer.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
So I'm a lawyer. And I'm actually specifically a contracts attorney, so not involved in litigation. But the way that I would see that playing out in my career, I think, is taking the opportunity to use God's creative energy alive in me through the Spirit to craft really good contracts that can bring about peace instead of conflict. And so bringing clarity into the written word that matches equal expectations and making sure that there's a good understanding between the parties so that there isn't conflict down the line, and heading that off so that there can be peace, like you said, between everyone who's brought to the table. So that might be one way.
Great example, because you're dealing with a place where it's high skilled and the stakes can be extremely high in getting clarification so that people can form relationships that are fruitful and productive. God bless you. Seriously.
My husband and I run a music recording studio, and just even in the past few months, God has been sending a lot of like high schoolers and like early college people into our lives. And yeah, I just think it's meaningful and special because I especially have been in a lot of the dark traps within Hollywood. And I think that we can help guide, especially younger people, into a safer space to do their music and creation and help illuminate some of the illusion and like darkness kind of that the world will,
Be more specific. How do you bring light into a dark place? Because some of the entertainment stuff is really dark, of course. Some of the law stuff is really dark too, for that matter.
What comes to my mind is even just kind of like being that light on the hill of showing your own peace, like going through the darkness and being at peace and not wanting just the next opportunity and the next thing and to focus on the creation of it and not, oh, am I going to be famous? So to me, a lot of it is just having conversations too about like the elusiveness of fame, and let's focus on like the creation of the actual music. And most importantly, we're not there to take advantage of them. We want them to own as much of their material as possible and to like get a good starting out point for, creating,
It's great. Thank you.
I used to be an apartment manager for 12 years.
Oh, I've done that.
And it was very difficult. We had a lot of family members praying that we would get out, and I was probably the only person that was praying that I get to stay a little bit longer, because people opened up to me so much easier and were willing to share their lives with me. And most of these people were complete strangers when I met them. But I knew that I had a very key position, that I was usually one of the first non-family members to find out if there was a divorce, if there was a death in the family, if there was an injury, if work was just not going well, and I could be there. Everyone knew I was a Christian. I didn't force it down their throats, but I just always made myself available. And I can't tell you how many times I got to pray for tenants in their apartments, in my apartment. I always made too much food, and just found someone that had a hard day at work or was feeling sick or something and just gave it to them. And it really was a ministry. And it was really hard moving away, even though it was definitely God blessing us. It was very hard leaving that, because there are so many people that I felt like God put on my heart to just pray for and intervene with, and it was very special. I mean, even some of the hardest people, I had one tenant that came into my apartment cursing every word in the book at me.
Yep.
And he left my apartment shaking my hand, saying, "Thank you for being such a good friend and looking out for me." I was like, what? That was totally God, though. And now that I'm not doing that job, I'm trying to find a way of, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but doing that again, and just like talking to the crosswalk lady at my kids' school, talking to the kids' teachers and messaging them regularly and encouraging them, and the principal. Like, everyone knows who I am. I am not a social person by any means.
I'm not sure I totally believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is true. I have a hard time being social. But I've been raised by amazing parents who have taught us, that it's like in every situation, in any job, no matter how humble, that you could always bring God to the spotlight. You could always bring Him glory in everything.
What is work? What is work?
Work is the gracious
Work is what? Gracious expression of Yahweh's, come on,
Service of others to create shalom.
and you're creating shalom in an apartment building and you're not working. See, that's a lie, of course, because you are working. You don't have a job for money, maybe,
Yeah.
but see, working has nothing to do with making money. Work has nothing, if you get paid, I mean, that's a good thing to do. I'm not against it. But see, work in the God sense is not about making money. That's a sidelight. Work is about creating shalom. And if you can do it, and I think you should do it, at least some of it, where you can make money and pay the bills, but the work is creating shalom. I see that hand. You got to have a microphone to talk here.
For you. We'll go Luke and then Susie, and then I have a question after that.
Yeah. So what you just brought up, I feel like I've been wrestling with this phrase a lot for the last few months, but work-life balance.
Sorry, say it one more.
Work-life balance seems to be a buzzword in the work from home culture, where a lot of people have gone to working from home since the pandemic. And the question in the workplace is, well, how do we maintain a work-life balance when you work from home and your bedroom may be your office? And how do you keep a barrier between your work and your life? That's obviously the American definition of work, not the Gerry definition of work. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what does work-life balance look like when you have the definition that it's the gracious expression of Yahweh's creative energy and service to others to create shalom. So, that's an all
fast but good. Yeah.
It's an all-encompassing definition where work is life,
That's
right?
correct.
And so I'm curious to hear how you would reframe the conversation around work-life balance.
See, and I want to differentiate work from a job. A job is important. A job you make money. A job you've got a job description, responsibilities, accountabilities, and all those kind of things. And jobs are good, but work is something behind a job. And the goal is to make your job work. And see, in American, we don't differentiate between the two. In Christendom, we should, because work is that's a 160-hour-a-week thing. And on my job, and the thing there is, I have one of my colleagues at Western, when I first went there, did a book called Balancing Life's Demands. Not prioritizing, but balancing. So I've got my seminary job, or when I was working machine shop, and the goal for me when I was doing machine shop is I want a job that when I walk out of there, I don't even think about it till I go back the next morning. That's not the case where I'm at now. So in my case, as this young seminary prof with children, 2 sons, work-life balance meant that no matter how overwhelmed I was with my seminary job, if one of my boys did a sports event, I was there and present with them, fully present with them. And we celebrated afterwards, or when David, who's so competitive, starts screaming and crying because he struck out, I was there to talk to the boy and try to talk him off the ledge and care about him and the other team members as well. That's the work-life balance. And I don't think that's whether you go to an office or not, because you can walk out of an office and still have your head in the office. It's when you go home, can you really give full energy to your family? And when you're at church, can you give full energy to worship and such? And that's going to look different for different people, but your job has to be contained. Your work has to be a full thing. It would be does that help at all?
Yeah, it does. I might have a follow-up question, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So that does help, though,
the
very much.
job-life balance, especially working at home, now we've got these things. My job is with me all the time. I never leave my job behind. It's in my pocket. So in the olden days, I had to be at the office to do the work, or I had to be in the machine shop to do the work. That's not the case for me anymore. I can do my work just about. When I fly home on the airplane tomorrow, I'll be working on the airplane because I can haul out my computer and read the THM thesis from South African Theological Seminary that I need to give a report to. And I'll be on the airplane, munching the bad stuff they give you on an airplane and drinking actually, Alaska has pretty good coffee and getting the work done. How do you keep the balance? When I get home, Sherry has my full attention for those 2 hours. That's a test. That's the best I can do. That's a great question. It really is. Job-life balance is critically important. But when you're doing stuff with your kids, that's work, in my definition. And as I told somebody this morning, they were back in the back. Oh, you guys, yeah. The worship team lady here with her new baby, so cute, so cute. I said, be nice to your new little baby because that little baby will pick your nursing home. Yeah. Just get a perspective on things. Yeah, there they are. Yeah, yeah. Be nice to little James. Is that his name? Jack. Yeah. Be nice to Jack because he'll pick your nursing home. At 75, that's an issue for me. Yeah. Over here.
Okay, one sec. I would just love maybe if there's someone in the room who feels like even after all of this, like you still feel like, and this would take some courage, but you feel like your job, you're like, I still don't know how to do this. Yeah? Okay.
Now you're getting hands.
Right. Maybe share it briefly and then workshop
about it.
Yeah, I'm a family law attorney.
Okay.
It's one of the grossest industries
that
I've
ever
ever seen.
I'm a pastor.
I don't know how to, I do my best. I do my best to think about how do I serve my client, how do I take care of them, how do I protect them. But a lot of the time, they just want to kill each other.
Yep.
And keep the kid away from the other one and take all the money and run. It's vile. And I get sucked into it too because I own my business, so I have to pay all the bills as well. So the money issue is a real thing.
Yeah.
I can't keep my employees if I don't make money, and I can't provide the service if I don't make the money to keep my employees.
And you're in a place where I was going to use a gross word, maybe I won't, just the baddest guy wins the case in most cases in the courts. Of course, you have respect from the judge because the judge knows you. And that'd be a place would be to develop respect with the judge and do it by caring about the judge's character and stuff. Because I know lawyers and judges talk. I've got a couple of Christian attorney friends that are in family law. And I've asked them one of this thing, how do you win? Because you're not a mean person. And I know what it looks like. I've not been in family court very often, but I've heard the stories. On my phone right now, I just got a text this afternoon from Becca, the guardian ad litem. Report comes tomorrow, and her son, Elliot, is a battleground between her and the husband that threw her away. And it's just brutal, brutal. And I mean, what I think, and I'm thinking from a pastoral perspective, is take people who hate is eating them alive. I can't change the spouse, but I can talk to them about what this hate is doing to you and what it's doing to your kid. And that's what I try to do, is bring it to that level, because it's the same kind of thing I do as a pastor, what my police friends do too. What do you do? I mean, you've thought about this, obviously.
What do I do as far as what?
To bring shalom into this horrible place.
I listen to them. I try and tell them, hey, we're just trying to get to the end of this. Once it's all over, it's not worth it to fight this hard. You're trying to kill another person who you used to love. This is also still the parent of your child. Don't forget that. Try and make it about your kids. That kind of stuff.
Yep. See, exactly right. If you're hating your spouse, if you're applying the poison, that's going to leak out on your kid, and you're hurting your kid. Can we do it to where you're going for the best? Absolutely. You're not playing the wimp. But can we do it in a way that I'm doing good for the relationship, which is now broken, and I'm doing good especially for our kid or kids, and get to that spot where I'm doing good instead of trying to ruin this person who's been so mean to me. That would be the attitude change I'd try to do. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do with Becca. I'm her pastor. I did their wedding before her husband threw her away. Failed badly in that one. I thought he was more healed than it turned out that he was. So that's the attitude I'm trying to do to Becca, because he is just slamming her. And it's a horror story.
Yeah, and a lot of times what I see is my clients just getting treated horribly.
Yeah.
And all I want to do is attack the other person.
Yep. Yep. And now again, I know on the law side, but we've got a really good Christian attorney up in Portland he's been a county commissioner and such. He's out of politics now and doing just family law. And he has such a good reputation with the judge because of his excellent legal work. When he comes and represents his client, he presents a great case to protect the kids and to reconcile the property settlement and custody issues. And he has huge respect with the judge. That'd be something I'd try to work for.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to that person if you could.
I'll give you a card and I can put you in touch with him.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another one. You want to share?
So I'm a plumber.
Yeah.
And I'm,
Oh man. Here we go. Yes.
so
we
I
need
go,
more.
I go
Yeah.
into people's homes,
Yeah.
more people's homes than probably most people do,
Yeah.
and actually have conversations. So I, at one point, did see it as work and as I was placed there by God and truly working for God.
Yep.
But at some point, and it was me because I'm a sinful person, I do see it as a job, unfortunately, because it's provided me with such a good lifestyle for my family.
Yep.
And we've been able to exceed in so many ways from, let's say, a worldly perspective. But now it's almost a burden because I see it as a job rather than work. And not to say that I cannot be used in it by God. I just have a very hard time now because of all the responsibilities that I have that have been built up over time that aren't necessarily wrong, but have taken away from me seeing it as work for God. But that's not to say that my attitude in work is like smearing every job or smearing every customer. I mean, I go with a good attitude because I do still see it as I'm serving the Lord, and people rave about me not because I'm necessarily that great, but just because I am trying to serve God in it. But I do struggle in that sense of how do I get it back to really it being work. And it's a family business also, so even outside of work, I'm still pulled into work because that's where all my family's conversations end up leading to. So I don't even separate life from work anymore. So
Oh, that's a great example. He really is. I mean, you've already said a lot of things. When you go into are you doing repair plumbing or new plumbing?
both.
Both.
Yeah.
In repair plumbing, somebody's got a toilet that doesn't work, or somebody's got a faucet that's dripping water in the basement or something. And when you can come in and do a good job for a fair price and keep your terms, I mean, that sets you up as an outstanding plumber already. And when you can do that, you're creating shalom. And is your family Christian? Or are you
Yeah, born and raised.
Do you have prayer meetings at your workplace during the week?
My father, because it's my father's company, my father sends us all devotionals on a very regular basis. So yes, but not like, not, there was a time, yes, but not in the current time and place. And that's not to say that my father, for example, is a very strong believer. So he does speak, let's say, truth to me on a regular basis, especially when I, talk to him about struggles and what I'm dealing with. Even more so, however, it's just hard to really coordinate that throughout every aspect of the job because we don't have the greatest attitudes at all times.
Yeah, thanks for your honesty. This is really true. I mean, I think what I do, and I know a couple guys are doing this in something like that, I would have a family meal or a workplace meal once a week. It didn't have to be fancy, but a meal together, say on Monday morning before you'd go out to your job or whatever, a good time, maybe Friday evening, and just spend an hour talking together, just talking about challenges and hopes and that kind of stuff, and take some time and pray and listen to the Holy Spirit and say, Lord Jesus, this plumbing is dirty work, and I come into our house and the spiders are there, and Gerry wants me to relocate them, not to kill them, murder them. And I mean, whatever. You can have some fun with it too. But in that point, Lord, remind us that work is the gracious expression of your creative energy in service of others for the creation of shalom, because it's so easy to forget when you're dealing in sludgy pipes. And it's true. It's true. Thank you for your honesty. That's wonderful.
I appreciate your answer. It's helpful for me.
Yeah. And somewhere you need community, supportive community. And I think that's really helpful. And that's the thing I missed in the machine shop, because there are no other Christians in the shop. And there was no community there. That was easier. For Sherry, she had a couple other Christian friends in the network engineering area that were helpful for her.
We have 3 last questions, if we could do it quickly.
I'll go quick. My question is just how do you kind of deal with when your jobs are causing so much burnout, or you're feeling just burnt out or overwhelmed that you feel like you're not able to give to the rest of your work, like your family and your children and, you know, church and those types of things. Like it's just the jobs itself, even though they are work and you're doing good work in your jobs, it takes so much out of you that you feel like you're not able to give in the other areas of your work.
Yeah. Complain. Seriously. Complain doesn't mean whine. Complain is a specific, in situation X, when you did Y, I felt Z, I'd like it if you. It's a marriage technique I do with new marriages all the time. You got to learn how to complain to your spouse in non-attacking ways. Yeah, I see all kinds of stuff going on here. Because, yeah, when you bottle it up, then it explodes. Yeah. But see, in a workplace where you're being asked to do more than you can do, come and complain. When you asked me to stay over to do that report last night, I felt used. I'd really like it if you'd give me some warnings so I can go home because I got kids that I want to love. Something like that. And see, something like that, you're not saying you're a jerk. You're not saying, you know, I'm going to call the Labor Relations Bureau if you don't shape up kind of stuff. Though those are all options. I'm not going to quit. And you're saying, I would, you know, this made me feel used. I don't want to feel used. I want to feel a contributing part of the job because you're great guys here. And if you're actually creating shalom by making that kind of peaceful request. And to me, that's a technique that's really helpful. Is you're creating shalom by the way you deal with in the conflicted situation. But you also don't say, sure, whatever you want, because that's not okay either. Because you do have other responsibilities. And I don't know where you work. I know in the churches, people get used up constantly in the name of ministry. And I speak rebuke to you if you're doing it. I know you're not. Well, maybe you are. Because a church, I mean, we do this at Grace. We really work hard to make sure that your job is constrained and you can go and leave it. But ministry, when grandma dies in the middle of the night, somebody's got to go deal with the family. But we try to protect people. Pardon? You know, one of the amazing things is, these little devices, there's an off button. And you tell your boss, I'm turning my phone off at 9 o'clock. I mean, or however, you got to be wise in how you do it. But you're putting wise boundaries, but you speak it positively. I've got to have renewed energy when I come tomorrow to serve you well. That means I need to turn my phone off at 9 o'clock tonight. Again, you're creating shalom by the way you do it. I mean, that's general ideas, but something like that.
Actually, Susie, if you want to go first, I'm going to try to boil my question down.
I'm gonna just pass because we're close to time. You go ahead.
Rats.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this quickly. One of the things that I found really sobering in your talk this morning was how you articulated in American culture that the same gods, lowercase g, that we read about in the Old Testament are working behind the scenes,
Absolutely.
Right here in America.
Absolutely.
Politics, you mentioned this morning being one. You know, I would say media and entertainment, if there's a 1-2 punch, right?
Creating addictions for
Yeah.
the sake of profit is evil.
So I'm a creative executive for a TV studio. I left a corporation broadcast network, right? Because it was the house that The Bachelor built, and it was all of those things, right? And it was clear to me that I couldn't exist in a space that was doing that. At times I find myself in the same predicament here, and as much as I can in the decisions that I can directly make in service of Yahweh to create shalom, sometimes the detriment of my job, like I do. Maybe not perfectly all the time,
Yeah. I'm sure.
but when you're a cog in a larger wheel,
Right.
that is directly doing things and sending messages for a very specific agenda, right? Out into the world for people to watch. How do you, and maybe you've counseled people in other industries, but where do you begin as a Jesus follower to draw that line?
Well, that's something I can't speak to at all by experience because I've never worked in a large corporation. I've never been involved in the creative stuff. I've got some heroes. Frank Rich was a producer, Hollywood producer for Secretariat and radio. He did 6 hugely good movies, made it to the top of the industry. And then he did his own film because he had enough stature to do it, and he did Nativity Story. It was a Hollywood production of the story of the birth of Jesus. It's fabulous. Sure, and I watch it every year. And he's got a standing in the community. I don't know what it is currently. He was a member of church up in Portland, is where I ran in. I never met him personally. But he was able to have impact. Now, he's at a higher level by quite a bit than where you're at. And I don't know how to do that because I've never been a part of that kind of an operation, so I can't give you any specific things. But there are sometimes you got to say, I can't be a part of this because I see the evil is behind the scenes, and I have to step away. So I think your job of leaving this other company is a wise thing to do. And I know jobs I could not be a part of. But what happens, and you're always in mixed stuff, because even churches are not perfect, I promise you. How do you become a part of something when there's evil stuff going on as part of it? And my base thing, one of my phrases, I'm all in or I'm not in at all, which is that 1 Thessalonians 4, minding your own business. I don't try to take responsibility unless I have influence. I don't try to give energy to it unless I can make a change in it. I look at, can I make a change in my sphere of relationship and do what I can in this sphere? But then I have to stop and think, well, what am I contributing to for the whole thing? And I realize in a corporation many times it's going to be part bad and part good. And I try to shape as much. But that's what I do. I try in my significant piece. And that's what Gerry did at Bank of America. Bank of America was a large bank, and they were doing some good stuff, and they were doing some bad stuff, as big banks tend to do. And she was aiding and abetting, in some cases, stuff that was just manipulative and exploitive. But her piece was actually creating shalom in her work environment, and much of what they do was positive. And she said, my thing is, Lord Jesus, I'm contributing something, it's sin. I want to bring your beauty into this place, and it's contradictory, and I don't know what to do about it. And then take a deep breath and go back to work. So I don't have any specific advice for you. Talk to Gerry, she could tell you a little bit maybe. But you're wrestling with the problem, and that's the key. Instead of just blind eyes, okay, the pay is good, whatever they do, that's not okay. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here's what I want to do. We've got like 10 minutes. A few people on the worship team. If you guys want to come forward, we'll play 2 songs. Here's what I'm going to ask of you guys. Job stuff's hard, work's hard. If you're here tonight and you're just like, man, I would just love prayer. Like my current situation is just hard. We'd love to pray for you. So just take a second. If that's you, great. Now I'm going to ask, would you raise your hand if you just would like to get prayer tonight? Yep, great, sweet. So here's what I'm going to ask. Keep your hands up. If you're around someone who has their hand up, would you go pray for them? As the music's going, just ask, hey, what's your name? Give me brief, anything specific I can pray for. Pray for that person. Cool? We're going to sing. If you're not praying for somebody, you're not getting prayed for, you can sing. Band's going to sing over us. We'll enjoy Jesus in the process. So, hands back up. Everyone, keep it up until someone comes and prays for you, okay? And so if it's almost half and half. So if you're a Christian in here, and go pray for somebody, okay? So keep your hand up if you need prayer. They're going to lead us in a couple songs. Then we'll get out of here. We're going to pray. In Jesus' name.